LDLC are the champions of DreamHack Winter, the last Counter-Strike major, and so if you want to call that a world championship, which is perfectly legitimate, then within that context, they're the current reigning world champions. And yet, this team, who are undeniably one of the top two teams in the world, have a distinct problem, which means that they're number two of the top two teams in the world. And in a clear-cut fashion, despite that incredible win in Jönköping at DreamHack Winter, if we look at the history and the context of LDLC, we'll start to realize why that's a problem. Why it's a problem that you could be that consistently good and yet you're not number one. Because when this team was formed and it officially came together at the beginning of September, this team was like a French super team in terms of star power of names, even in terms of the role. So obviously Smith isn't a star, but as a supportive player, he was a star name, one of the best in the world at that role. When this team was formed, even just looking at it on paper, everyone had to think to themselves, as I know LDLC must have, like, this team could be the best in the world. This team could be the world champions. This team could win every single LAN it attends if things go the right way. Especially at that point in time, NIP was struggling really. They'd won ASL Cologne in a very dubious fashion, quite frankly, and they came back down to earth right after that. At the time, Fnatic hadn't fully gotten everything correct. They'd almost gone out in the round of 8, and then they lost the final in close fashion to NIP. Virtus Pro had been quite lackluster at that tournament. The old LDLC team was good, but wasn't good enough to win. This Titan was a mess. The whole scene seemed like that it's wide open competition. There's no dominant team, and then you put this team together, this LDLC lineup. It maybe will be the best team in the whole world, but it didn't really become that case because they've played 6 LAN tournaments together with this lineup since September. And on the 6 LAN tournaments, if I give you the stats for placings, you're going to think, oh my God, what an incredible... This should be the best team in the world, right? If you don't know the context of the rest of the CS world. If I told you of the 6 tournaments, they won 2 of them. They finished third, they finished second in 3 of them. So that's, of the 6 tournaments, 5 times they made the final, 2 times they won. And of the 6 tournaments they played, they were top 4 in every single incident. There's only 1 tournament they ever played at where they placed outside of the final, and they still made the semis. That's what an incredible team we're talking about here. What is the problem then? Those sound like awesome stats. Well, their problem is, over Fnatic's last tournament, 6 tournaments, Fnatic has won 4 of those tournaments. Fnatic has made about the same amount of finals, roughly. Also had a 6 streak of top 4s, which was broken at DreamHack Winter, but very, very long, prestigious amount of top 4s. So LDLC lacks something to become the true champion, to become the world champion, the best team in the world, the most dominant, the most consistent. Something lacks. And you go through the team, you go through their style, you'll start to see where some of these holes can exist. So let's just think about some of the players they have first. We'll start with the biggest name in LDLC. It's Shox. In early 2013, Shox really was showing in CSGO that this guy was a really skilled player within the French scene. And obviously in Source, he was a monster. He was one of the best players ever. And so he got picked up by Very Games. And within a couple of months, he was one of the main factors in Very Games, going from that perennial second-place team who couldn't quite break through NIP to this team who was then beating NIP, who was then dominating NIP statistically, winning like 5 out of 6 maps, beating them in 3 straight best-of-3s in a row. This guy was the main reason, and at the time, you could make a case that he was the best player in the whole world. His game impact was fucking insane in these games. He even was great going through the end of 2013. In 2014, he continued to have spells where he was really good. Remember that online phase where he was just owning everyone and going god mode with the AWP and pistols? It seemed like he was a god, even if Very Games, and they were called Titan at the time, had their problems. But in this LDLC team, he has never been close to the player he was before. Even in Epsilon, he'd have a map. Remember the famous Shoxalon maps? There was the one where he was against NIP at Gfinity. The most famous one, obviously, is against Hellraisers, where he helped just 16-0 them and just went complete god mode. He's never really had those maps in the offline tournaments for LDLC. He's never even really been the main star. He's had good stats sometimes on paper. He's had a 3-kill here, around there, some AWPing here that's looked good. But he's never really been the superstar. And a lot of this is down to the fact that he doesn't seem to take the superstar role. He's even said in interviews like, oh, I'm not the star in this team. Like, I don't have to be. Oh, we've got 5 stars in our team. And you see he AWPs way more than he ever did before. If I think of Shox at his best, I think of a mid-round player who's got the freedom, doesn't have to go in first, doesn't go in last, picks his spots of how he takes engagements, has incredible aim, amazing with the rifles, crucially. Decent AWPer, can sometimes be good if he's hot, but I'd keep him away from the AWP. I'd have him doing this sort of role, and he'll dominate the whole game. He's great breaking open. Once the site's already been opened, he can go in and get all the kills. He can be the mid-round guy who transitions you into the point where it's a clutch round and they can win the 1v2, the 2v3. It's great in all these positions. They don't always seem to use him like that in LDLC. And as a result, he's become just a good player playing a different role, but not the superstar. You keep going down. For me, the guy who's next on the list in terms of potential to be a star, to be a breakout player, would have been Kiyashima. He always would have some good games before, but he never was truly a star. Like I'm talking about Shoxi, he never really got to that level and never had the consistency and the consistent game impact to be the star. Now the big problem for Kiyashima in LDLC was he was one of the most noticeable problems they had in the matches they would lose. Like he was the guy where he was just way too inconsistent once it got to the big semi and the big final. He's a guy where he looks, when he's on his form, like what sick aim he has and what precision 2 bullets out of the AK to just insta-kill that guy and then kill this guy. And seems like he should be able to dominate the game. But in a sense, he reminded me of Scream in that sense. Like in very games, Scream would have the super sick aim and he'd have the great stats even. But in these big games, he was one of the key factors that they lost because he couldn't elevate to the same degree some of the other superstars in the world would. Now, that seemed to actually change a little bit. That seemed to be a big factor in why LDLC won DreamHack Winter. Because actually, for me, Kiyashima was the MVP of the tournament. He was way more improved. In the big clutch situations against Fnatic and against NIP, he would have the huge map, the huge game. He could be a dominant force. He actually seemed to embrace the clutch situations and the pressure then. And that seemed to be a very promising sign. I think that is something that can elevate LDLC if he can establish himself that way, because they need a star right now. The thing about the Shocks thing about we don't have a star, we have 5 stars. Not in the big games you don't, mate. In the big semis and the big finals, suddenly no one's a star. Suddenly you're all sat around and no one's going crazy. No one's having huge game impact. No one's dominating the game. No one's always winning this situation. No one's going head-to-head with their star and keeping up the pace and never allowing the other team to blow you away. That's what was happening in these games. And especially it was noticeable every time they would play Fnatic. Someone like Crims or JW would be the star, and then there was no answer from LDLC's side. Now, it has started to change a little bit. Then we go down. I think immediately I'm thinking of NBK, because I have so much respect for NBK's career when he was in Very Games. I always thought in Very Games and Titan, he was one of the only factors I never could put any blame on for their losses and the times they would do badly or the times that they would get close and they wouldn't win. He always felt like, to me, of all the people in the world, he's one of the best ever at doing his job. Like, the beauty of NBK is he's so versatile in his skills, but so unselfish that if you're a tactician, he's like the dream guy. I can totally understand why Existence made the game along with MBK, and he was a key factor in that Very Games team, because if you're the in-game leader, you want versatility, you want variety in what you can do, you want a lot of options, so that then you can apply your mind and reading the game and go, right, I know what's going on there, and but in my toolkit I don't have anything that could actually work against that. No, if you got someone like MBK, you always have an option, you always have something you can do, a different tweak you can do to a round, a different position you can ask him that he maybe doesn't even usually use. I need you to do this time, I need you to throw this flash this time, I want you to follow this guy, hold this part of the site on your own. He can do all these things. His problem was, and he's done these things in LDLC, it seems like he's also a big reason that's they've turned around. But in the other tournaments before DreamHack Winter, he was a huge failure in this team. He was doing dog shit in terms of fragging repeatedly in those finals. The ESWC final, Fragback Masters final, he was non-existent. He was just getting owned every single time. Like, LDLC is on monsters on Inferno. His CT play in that small site on Inferno, he just used to get bullied by Fnatic. He couldn't do anything against them. And that was a really big problem for them, it felt like. Now then, he did start to pick it up around Fragmite Masters. That's when, as a player, he started to get his level higher. He was dominant in that series against Virtus Pro when they came back to Windows 2 and then Smash Inferno. He really leveled up. And then crucially at DreamHack Winter, he was a big-time player against Fnatic. He's one of the real reasons why they legitimately looked like they were going to beat Fnatic in the best of 3. And then he was a big part of going forwards. He really got his shit together, and he started to be able to have the game impact, but that spread out game impact in every area and doing whatever it's asked of me. He started to have that, actually. Then we come down. We've got 2 people left. Go to the in-game leader. So we've got Happy here. Now, the crazy thing about Happy was that when everyone else was doing shit, even these star names were doing crap, and then MBK was struggling, it felt like Happy almost never did struggle individually. Sometimes he would just carry the game in terms of frags, but they couldn't win because it was the big semi or the big final. He seems like a really driven guy, where some of the others clearly break mentally, or did in the past, or they have a tendency to get worried, to get nervous, to to tighten up, and they feel the pressure of this moment and they're choking and what's going wrong. He seems like the guy who was always driven. Like, whereas some people, when the pressure comes in like that, their mental voice joins in with the outside pressure, and it's, oh fuck, what's happening, and I'm like choking, yeah, fuck, I made a mistake there, like, oh, that shouldn't have happened, and he seems like the guy where he has like the winner's mentality of like the voice turns outwards, and it's like, no, I'm gonna do this, and I don't care that this is a super hard situation. I'm gonna get this kill, and we're gonna break this site open, and just everyone join me, follow me, and we'll do this. And it seemed like he had that mentality going forwards to him. Now then, the problem for him was he was the in-game leader, and if you're the in-game leader, we don't judge you on your individual game, except in terms of impact within your strats. But we judge you on what T-side rounds are you getting? How are you doing in games that are close? Because in games that are close, what makes the great in-game leaders is they call the right executes that get you the wins, or they grind out the one round you needed out of the next 4. Happy wasn't doing that. Their T-sides were fucking shit in the context of the best teams in the world here. They couldn't compare to some of these other teams. They had super 6 CT team sides, and that's what they lived and died on. But sometimes their T-side would be quite lackluster. In fact, one of the famous things about LDLC was they were the gods of the CZ, the CZ75A auto pistol. They were the team where it was crazy. At DreamHack Winter especially, it felt like sometimes they would win more rounds that they had to save and use the CZ than actual fucking gun rounds on Terrorist side. And when you have players like they have in their team, versatility, Shocks and NBK, skill, Shocks and NBK and Kiyashima, when you have this level of skill and fragging, if you're not winning T-side rounds, there's something wrong at a fundamental level. Either people aren't doing what the in-game leader's saying, in which case at some point you have to change it and adapt to what people can do and will do, or people aren't able to execute it, or they aren't good enough at the tactical, at the terrorist side. There's clearly a problem was going on there, so I have to put that as a knock against Happy. That was something in the past that was a problem. Now then, obviously they were improved at DreamHack Winter. We saw some much better performances overall, a lot tighter as a team and knowing what the fuck they were doing. That's all great. The last man in the lineup is Smiths. Now Smiths was the guy where he's always going to be overhyped by fans, but not in a way where it's like he's bad and he's overhyped, but in a way where they've overhyped his top level. Because the CZ particularly helped him so much. It allowed him to go from being this passive, hold one, utilitarian style, utility AWPer, just hold an angle, hold this corner, hold this position, get the early pick and drop back, that sort of an AWPer, to being able to be that guy we saw in Inferno, who I was called the mini JW, affectionately, a little bit derisively as well, because he would just aggressively push up into the house and he would just pop out and suddenly be going for crazy shots he never would have before. But the reason he could do it is because if you chased him back, he could just bullshit you with the CZ, and he could use that to hold his position. You couldn't just bomb rush him, and then if you even did come for him, he could possibly get a kill on the exit because you could move while shooting the CZ. That gun really opened his game up, made him look a lot better than he was. But crucially, he was maybe the worst in their whole team in the games against Fnatic that they were losing those finals and some of the big semi. He was a guy who really struggled, actually. He seemed like, of all the players in their team, I felt like him and MBK, the choking got to them the worst. They're the ones who got the most broken by like the negative internal monologue, the problems, other people in the game not playing and them not being able to carry any of the load. He seemed like he really was pained there. And actually, I have to say, even though they won DreamHack Winter, yeah, they won the World Championship, they won that big major, but of all the players in the team, I thought his performance was still a bit lackluster, actually. I thought he was one of the reasons it was so close against Nip, and they were against Fnatic, there were times where they struggled. I felt like actually he was the guy who, his Super 6 CZ Mini JW play had cooled off big time by DreamHack Winter, and even though they won, unfortunately for him, I can't say it was that great a performance. Now then, what are the reasons behind some of these issues for them? Well, part of their in-game leadership problems comes from the fact that no one wants to be the in-game leader in this team. I'm sure people have conveniently forgot about that now that they've won DreamHack Winter, and they think, oh, they were always awesome and they were great, they got everything they need to done. No. When this team was formed, the original idea was NBK was going to be the in-game leader. Now that lasted about a week, and then they were like, no, Shocks will be the in-game leader, like he was in Epsilon. Yeah, that's the move. And then they got their asses beat by Titan at DreamHack Stockholm. And then they got beaten by Titan in the ESWC French final. And then they decided, apparently, like, no, Happy will be the in-game leader. The guy, by the way, who'd always been the in-game leader in LDLC was clearly a very good in-game leader. So now Happy finally takes the role, except apparently, who knows, did he want the role before and they wouldn't give it to him? Whatever the reasoning was, it doesn't actually seem like him being the in-game leader changed too much. It changed a bit, but actually a lot of the problems they had with this inconsistency and couldn't get T rounds and good on this map, but then sometimes a flounder to the absolute best team like a Fnatic dominant team on that map. People choking, not being so clutch here. Almost all the problems seem to have followed them even when he became the England player. Now, it does seem like he's put a bit more structure in there, and people are a bit tweaked in terms of roles and placed here, so this guy can be here. But it's still not entirely fixed. They're not a great T-side team by any stretch of the imagination. They're still super dominant on that individual CT side and their talent level. In terms of their mentality, you can't deny it. They've clearly had choking issues. People will think this is like too harsh to criticize this. But like I said at the beginning, this is a team that has played at 6 tournaments and never placed below top 4. So they're always in contention to win the tournament. Oh, and at the 6 tournaments, 5 out of the 6, they were in the final. So even if you exclude the one where they lost in the semi-final, which I wouldn't, because it was at Face It, this team really could have won all 6 events and be the best team in the entire world and the definite number 1 dominant most team. Instead, they haven't. They've lost a bunch of times to Fnatic, and they've just found a way to lose in these key games over and over. Think about it this way. I'll break it down tournament by tournament to show you the problems that they have in these key matches in terms of choking, in terms of underperformance. So first tournament, DreamHack Stockholm. They beat Titan on a convincing Mirage game in the group stage. They get the easy semi-final thanks to 3D Max upsetting Dignitas. They go to the final. Titan comes out of nowhere, blows them away, and actually it's quite unconvincing by this LDLC team. They've lost in quite unconvincing fashion. It's like, what the fuck's going on here? That one's terrible. That was a big time underperformance. But okay, it's still a new team. They go to Star Series 11. They're really good here. They still have some games against Na'Vi where when it gets close, Na'Vi's winning a map, or it's looking, Na'Vi, this is getting dangerous, but they hold out. Now listen, admittedly, Na'Vi's like, for me, they're maybe our 4th best team in the world. They're not really going to win huge events, but you still got tested a little bit more than I would have expected from a team on the level of this LDLC team. Then we come to the Face It LAN. Semi-finals, you play against the iBuy power lineup with Dazed and Steel. This epic Inferno first map. And despite the fact of being in there and having comebacks against this team who should be lesser than you, they lose the map. They choke under the pressure. iBuy Power plays out of their skins. They win the game. iBuy Power takes the series. iBuy Power goes to the final, and Fnatic wins the tournament. So this tournament, LDLC was the second best team. They should have been able to go to at least the final and then had a chance to beat Fnatic. Instead, they go out semi-finals unconvincingly. Then you go to ESWC. Now, they overcome the ESWC France problems. They go to the semis. They have this close series against Na'Vi in terms of the third map, but they prevail. They prevail again. They go to the final, get utterly dominated by Fnatic. This one wasn't even close. This was embarrassing how much they choked, and they just totally, everything turned inwards, and it was like 10 players versus 0, because they were on fucking Fnatic's side with how they were just choking and couldn't get anything going and nothing in the team whatsoever, except Happy doing some stuff on one map, but that's about it. Then you go over to Fragbite Masters. They play against Virtus Pro with a stand-in and actually get fucking spanked on Overpass in the first game in a way that should never happen against a team who hasn't even got their full lineup. Okay, they recover, they smash Virtus Pro on the other 2 maps, doesn't matter. They get to the final from the winner's bracket now. Start with that advantage in the final. You go to the grand final itself, Fnatic joins them there after beating everyone. Yeah, they managed to beat Fnatic on Inferno, that was really good stuff. Close overtime game, but overall Fnatic still wins 3-1. And even that one game that Fnatic lost was an overtime game where Fnatic had already been at map point. Like Fnatic could not lose the map at that point. And then LDLC managed to come back, and then they managed to win a close overtime session, but that wasn't like a super convincing win over Fnatic to show it, well, we are better, and on our day we smash you here, and you smash us there, but we smash you here. No, not really. Now in DreamHack Winter, that was a close series actually against Fnatic. They wrecked Fnatic, but then Fnatic wrecked them. And then the third map, okay, admittedly in the third map, they looked like they were going to win, and they were going to win pretty convincingly, it looks like, on Overpass. And that would have been the crowning moment. But for whatever reasons, we all know them, circumstances, the boost, the diamond decision, the forfeits, back and forwards, it never really got properly decided. So then you go to the semis, easily took care of Na'Vi. Remember in the final, the one huge event they won Starladder, but the one huge event they won, and at an event with teams like Virtus Pro and Fnatic all in attendance, was DreamHack Winter. And yet we all know, as every NiP fan will no doubt never let us forget, that NiP had 2 map points to win this whole series, the whole tournament. LDLC was that down to the wire, and in some of those rounds that they won to get it to overtime, and then in overtime, they were close. They were the sort of scenarios where one guy steps that way, the whole fucking game's over. It's all she wrote. There were some really nervy times, and they did have some people who held up, some people didn't hold up so much, that's why it got so close, and even in their best moments, you can see here, in their worst and in their best, they're having the same problems, the same character and identity comes to the surface and manifests itself in the game in terms of the impact of who has an impact here and what happens there. Now, clearly, as I mentioned, as I went through the lineup, things have improved almost player for player. Shock still hasn't really become the star. Smith has had some problems recently. Happy doesn't seem like he's entirely got his T-side aspect going. Kiyoshima's much improved. MBK's certainly improved and is becoming a force in terms of how he can help and facilitate the rest of the team, and even individual fragging sometimes. There's a lot of positives going for them right here. Their biggest problem is that Fnatic team's still out there, and that Fnatic team just won another event, and that Fnatic team still won 4 of the last 5 that they've played. That Fnatic team still only placed outside the top 4 one time out of something like 8 tournaments now. Their problem is Fnatic exists, that LDLC isn't good enough on T-sides yet, and they still need to fix some aspects of their in-game leadership and what role people are going to take. So it's a great team. It's one of the absolute best in the world. You shouldn't even compare anyone except Fnatic to them, because no one else can hold a candle to them. NIP can't hold a candle to LDLC. Virtus Pro can't hold a candle to them. They're definitely a level below, but there's still something holding Fnatic above LDLC. And until LDLC can fix some of these issues, they might still win tournaments. They might even win the next major. They might be a great team. But this consistency is always going to be plagued as long as these issues exist.